Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole LeVay, and I'm an intern at MOAD in Public Programs. First, I want to thank you all for tuning in. And secondly, I want to acknowledge the challenging circumstances we're all in. I hope everyone in our audience is safe and healthy, and I would like to welcome you all to MOAD Online and wish you all a very happy Pride. I have just a few things I would like to say before we get started with our program. First, MOAD stands in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. We honor and mourn the senseless murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others who have lost their lives at the hands of police brutality and racial injustices, including those whose names we do not know. Secondly, as many of us are settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those forcefully brought to this continent, our institutions are founded upon exclusions and erasures of Indigenous peoples upon whose lands we are located. With deep respect, MOAD and myself would like to acknowledge that even in virtual space, our people, work, and network servers are located on Native lands. We would like to thank the Indigenous people of the Bay Area who have stewarded this land for generations and continue to do so. Today, in honor of Pride, we are presenting the panel Queer, Black, and Here in conjunction with our co-presenter, SF Pride. Before I introduce our moderator and panelists, I want to remind everyone that this program is streaming live on MOAD's Facebook Live and YouTube Live. A recording will be archived and on our YouTube channel. Please let us know where you're joining us from by typing your location into the chat. Please use the chat or the Q&A to submit any questions you may have, which we will address at the end of the program. Stay tuned at the close of the program to see how you can support MOAD in its mission to support Black cultures, ignite challenging conversations, and inspire learning through the global lens of the African diaspora. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be introducing this panel today. First, I would like to introduce Kerby Lynch, who is our moderator. Kerby Lynch is a current doctoral candidate at UC Berkeley. Her current dissertation explored the historical geography of Black displacement in San Francisco with an emphasis on Black queer community formations. In the future, Kerby seeks to continue archiving Black queer experiences across the diaspora. Kinfolks, pronouns they, them, is a founder and program co-director of the East Bay Queer Arts Center, the Oakland Pride Creative Arts and Film Fest, and Spectrum Queer Media. An internationally recognized TQBLGIA plus rights activist and TQBLGIA plus rights and creative arts advocacy organization. Kin is a published author, poet, and activist whose work has been lauded by the Huffington Post and presented nationally and globally, including in Japan, South Africa, and Jamaica. Informed by their Jamaican, African, and Choctaw heritage, Kin prioritizes collective horizontal leadership, intuition, art as science, equitable practices, and somatic intelligence in the creation of collaborative social justice projects. We also have Sadie Barnette, whose artwork deals in the collective and familial histories in earthly acts of resistance and celebration, but is also tethered to the otherworldly, a galactic escape. Born and raised in Oakland, California, she earned her BFA from CalArts and her MFA from the University of California, San Diego. Her work has been exhibited throughout the US and internationally and is in the permanent collections of museums such as LACMA, the Studio Museum in Harlem, where she was also an artist in residence, Brooklyn Museum, and the Guggenheim. Recent projects include the reclamation of a 500-page FBI surveillance amassed on her father during his time with the Black Panther Party, and her interactive reimagining of his bar, San Francisco's first Black-owned gay bar. Lastly, we have Terrence Francois, pronouns he, him. Terrence is an activist, event producer, and MC. He uses his leadership, events, and local partnerships to connect people to talented transgender, non-binary, and women artists at the forefront of sustainable fashion, streetwear, unapologetic gender expression, body positivity, and diversity in media. He's co-produced unforgettable events such as Cali Fantasies at the MOAD in San Francisco and Ascension at Meta Den in New York. He is the founder of Wear Versatile, an event production agency which curates entertaining, empowering, and brave events that cater the culture of Black and people of color LGBTQIA/GNC community. Terrence is a proud trans queer Caribbean man who lives and works between the SF Bay Area and New York. Please join me in welcoming all of our participants.
You need to unmute, Kerby.
Sorry, okay, hey. Anyway, welcome everybody. Just giving my love and appreciation to MOAD for always having great programs and, you know, really bringing us together as a community this month. You know, some of us are isolated and, you know, struggling to have communities. So I hope this conversation can, you know, just provide some connectivity during these challenging times. So yes, these panelists are amazing, and I'm really going to ask questions that really understand their philosophy on like creating space and like preserving our history, and then actually imagining what the future is, you know. So yeah, so to get started with the first question, I'm going to ask Sadie to kick it off for me. Is what has been your journey to stepping into this role of curating community in the Bay Area? Why bring us together in a society comfortable with division? You know, like we have online communities, sometimes we're not always able to connect. So, you know, where do you see your role in all of this?
Thank you. Thank you for all coming together. Thank you to everybody for, you know, showing up. I know that holding virtual space is a little bit different than if we were all together. I'm sure a lot of us know folks who have joined, and if we were all together, you know, we'd be admiring each other's outfits, and it would be a much more social kind of feeling. But I do appreciate everyone for showing up and, you know, doing these remote things so that we can keep the conversations going and keep folks working as well. I also just want to, you know, start by thanking those that came before me, both on this land, also in this profession as a maker and an artist, and also in this conversation. You know, I know we all see ourselves in a long lineage of continuing this legacy. And I'm really here doing this work, you know, not because I thought, oh, I want to make a space that honors, you know, Black, queer, Bay Area spaces or history, but really because the project just kind of demanded that I take it on because it is my family history. So the project that was Nicole briefly mentioned is a restaging of my father's bar. So my father ran the New Eagle Creek Saloon. I think we even have some images. Ran this bar from 1990 to 93 in San Francisco on Market Street. And I always wanted to do a project about that work that he did, because to me, it was very much connected to his other activist work, you know, whether working with the Black Panthers, working with Angela Davis. To me, you know, a gay bar is actually right in line with that. And some people, you know, might think, well, it's a bar. What does that have to do with activism? But, you know, we know that these spaces are sacred. They're spaces for sharing resources, really spaces for coming out, for finding community and not being alone. Especially the reason that my father started this bar was because of the racism that him and his friends were experiencing at the white gay bars at the time. It was, you know, well documented and so pronounced that, you know, laws even had to be passed banning some of the practices of discrimination that they were experiencing. So at the, you know, some of the well-known white gay bars, people of color and Black folks would be asked for 3 forms of ID. Music would be changed, their dancing would be policed in ways that other patrons weren't. So really my dad set up this bar as a way to provide a space for dignity for, you know, his community and what was supposed to be the, you know, gay mecca of our country at that time. And so in thinking about how to honor this bar, it didn't really make sense to make an art show about it. I felt like I had to make a bar. It had to be the thing, not just be about the thing. So I was able to actually host this first at the Lab in San Francisco, which is an amazing space where I think a lot of folks have been able to find and make community. And then the project later traveled to the Institute of Contemporary Art in LA. We also took the entire bar to SF Pride last year, which is just crazy thinking about, you know, how much has changed in this year. This would be Pride weekend this year. And so it was really able to create new moments of celebration, resistance, dancing, you know, drinking, community, communing. and also honoring the bar and those, you know, ancestors who came before us and did this work. So I'm sure, you know, as we talk about a lot of different things and how all of our work intersects, I'll probably be, you know, getting into some of the specifics of it. But as far as, you know, how I was called to create this space, it was really just listening to the material and knowing that to honor it properly, we had to be out there in real time together. I'm not typically an artist who works with a lot of people and performance, but it just had to be done. And I tried to answer that call and really make it feel alive and active.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, beautiful work. Terrence, do you want to share next? What has been your journey stepping into the role of creating community in the Bay Area?
So for myself, and actually before I even start, thanks for Maude for putting this on, and Kerby and Folkz, Sadie for being together in this moment, and thank you, each one of you who's here from different places. Myself is that I'm actually a transplant, right? So I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and I've been living in the Bay since 2011. I'm currently in New York. So I spent 7 years in the Bay, formative years of my adult experience. And so I first always pay respect to a lonely land, and just like, I created events, particularly in Oakland and in New York, to one, bridge the Underground Railroad that connects our families and our queer and trans people. Because if folks have lived in New York or lived in Oakland, you always know, aside from this moment in time, because of the global health crisis, that during the summer, there's some like moments in which we all move from one coast to another. And we just like give each other some high fives, some lessons, some herbs. Like we let each other know what to prepare for, what needs changing, and what to expect. And then we kind of just wish each other good luck in our new journeys. And it's not something that like we actually do in that moment. It's literally, we find each other in these spaces. That's the party scene. So I'm a nightlife creator, and I create daytime events. And particularly I create these events because I started a lot of my organizing work through direct action and through like on the ground, like front lines, direct services, particularly when I organized in New York City regarding youth organizing and police brutality and cop watch. And then in Oakland, right, I continued them. So actually one of my first events I did here was with Causa Justa Just Cause, which is a housing and immigrant rights organization that has done amazing work, right? And protect a lot of tenant laws that we actually have in Oakland to this day. And I got to put on my first event, a drag fundraiser. I got to be at Club 21, which unfortunately closed down due to gentrification, right? Which is part of like the long history that is Oakland, San Francisco. This dope photo over here is actually the Wonder Twins on the left, Daniel Shaw, the creator of Cali Fantasies, which is this what the event is about. My best friend, visual artist, April Martin over there, and then Carlos, owner of Club 21. We actually were Club 21 hosted not only my first drag fundraiser, but also Cali Fantasies, which is a nightlife event with celebrated queer Black strippers. And it'd be the only safe space in which queer women of color, masculine-centered women, trans people could see our bodies reflected in a way that wasn't in the gaze of men, and felt safe, right? So the ability to bring this conversation to MOAD, to bring the conversation of gentrification, of closing establishments and businesses, right, meant a lot, and also was really reflective of like the changes that our communities have gone through. And actually just continues a conversation that Sadie started off with her dad created in the bar, the Black Gay Bar in San Francisco. Like we are only a legacy of who come before us. And so it felt like my duty, and I feel called to just continue that. And this is my type of direct action, before and after.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Real poetic. I like that. Kim Folkz, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I can't complain. I'm so excited for this conversation. But I really want to hear your answer to this question, you know, specifically you. What led you to your journey to stepping into the role of a community curator, cultural organizer in the Bay Area?
Ashe. First and foremost, I just have to give it up for this powerful circle. It is such a delight to be in the presence of all of you and all of your ancestors and our shared ancestors. This whole space is just booming with joy and love and commitment. So I just wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you, thank you, thank you for creating the space. I want to also honor my lineage, in particular, Black Choctaw and Jamaican Fulani, coming from Africa, and the energy that they imbue me with, and the lessons that they've imprinted in my body, and the way that they move my spirit into action. So much of the work that I do and how I came into this work was the way that I was born into the world. I'm autistic. I didn't start walking until I was almost 4, start speaking until I was almost 5, which in a dark brown skin body that is assigned female at birth, there are a lot of things that could happen, right? A lot of misfortunes, a lot of things that could happen. And I was blessed to have a community of people who understood the importance of the tribe. So I wasn't fed the notion of the independent, rugged individual. I was raised with the notion of the tribe, of the beauty of the collective sharing, that if I had a resource, certainly, assuredly, there was someone else who could use that resource. And if I needed a resource, assuredly, there's someone in community that could also help supply that to me. And so the work that I do is really just rooted in the care that I was given as a mute, being who didn't move. And the way that Black, queer people brought love and attention to me, especially in spaces that you don't think of, like the Black church. I was passed from hand to hand, arm to arm, rocking in the arms of beloved community members who didn't necessarily identify as heterosexual. And we're still there on Sunday, singing in the choir, leading the choir, on the junior and the senior usher board. And so I grew up in a space of compassion. I'm blessed that that was my experience. So we didn't have what other people had materialistically, but we had an enormous wealth of spiritual love and compassion and connection. And so when I started out on my journey after leaving my place of birth, I immediately was thrust into political activism. I went to Wellesley College and I was a fish out of water. I didn't understand a lot of how there was so much disconnect between us as Black people, especially as Black queer and GNC. At the time, those terms, GNC, trans, etc., we just knew that we were people who didn't fit, right? And we had to do a lot of this work alone. And I was committed when I was at Wellesley to finding the tribe, because that's all I knew. So I immediately started organizations. And I suppose this idea of being someone who leads by being led is how I like to see my work. So an example of that would be the Oakland Queer and Trans Open Mic that happens every Tuesday and has been happening ever since 2013. We were called into this work and we're not leading it. The community dictates what their needs are in that circle. So for people who might show up on a Tuesday night and expect an open mic like you see elsewhere, honeys, no, this is more like that righteous church, that church without the church hurt. This is all about spirit. There is no judgment. People get to come in, they get to lay down what they're carrying with them. They get to pick up what they need. And so anything and everything that I'm involved in has to be clear about our connection, clear about our right to equity, to compassion, to grace, and that we have to fight, that the fight's okay, because that's how we're going to get through, but we must do it together. We cannot fight each other. So, for example, we had a great action last weekend. We had the action to lift up the voices of Black trans, GNC, gender non-conforming, I'm going to spell it out because people were asking me, what the heck is GNC? Non-binary, femmes of all genders, and women of all genders. Because in the context of violence perpetrated against these bodies, we are prone to stop at a certain point. Very rarely do we talk about the preponderance of police violence and sexual exploitation and trafficking that is experienced by this community. Very rarely do we talk about the police murders. Very rarely do we talk about the interpersonal, the community violence that is perpetrated against these bodies. And so it was really important that we make it known that we will not shut up. We will continue to do this work. I also have a circle that I'm blessed to be a part of that I started years ago called Racism Under the Rainbow, where once again, we're committed to having these tough conversations within our own community so that we learn how to be a tribe again, so that we're not afraid to see each other and recognize grace in each other's gaze and not see each other as something to consume, but to see each other as another way to evolve. So Racism Under the Rainbow tackles difficult conversations around why not all of us feel comfortable walking through the Castro. Why some of us have started businesses only to find that we weren't given the support that we expected from people who should understand how important it is to support marginalized communities. So much of my work is focused on building the tribe from within, because if we're strong within, then anything that comes at us will be able to weather.
And that's period.
Ashe.
Yeah.
Ashe. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. Wow. Man, where do you go from there? Thank you so much for offering that.
Certainly.
Yeah. So this one's going to also get pretty deep. And I'm going to start with Terrence on this one. What was your first experience of being transformed by Black queer history or a Black past, like a Black queer past? And how did that impact your conception of self?
So when I began youth organizing in New York City, it was with Black people. Right? We talked about the intersectionalities of racism and where we grew up. And then I moved to the Bay as an adult. And when the conversation regarding housing and immigrant rights justice, I stepped into that. That was led by Black queer people, Black trans people. Often there's some conversations, I think mainly like liberal and mainstream people or networks, where they like to, I think, just be like, trans people have conversation about only trans subjects. And from organizing through like all the different sectors, I'm just like, transness, Black transness is in every single sphere of my life. There's no like isolating it or saying like it only belongs when it comes to healthcare, which is not something that people think about, or that it only belongs when it comes for June. That's the only time we should be talking about it. But I'm like, my Black queerness, my Black transness has everything to do with climate justice and about the nightlife scene, and thinking about like when I create events, how we can use sustainable fashion and sustainable cups, like, so that we're looking good and doing environmental good. Like,
yes.
Like, bitch, we need to stay moisturized. We need to like replenish ourselves. And I think it's lazy thinking to assume that we can't do both, or that we need to be told when in certain months of the year we're allowed to do one or the other, right? Because to be Black and trans, Black and queer, Black and, then you're supposed to just be yourself, be Black only in February, and then choose other parts of who you want to be the rest of the month, right? So it was really pivotal for me at an early age to know and understand and to be challenged by the idea that Black queerness is not regulated to like a month. It's actually seeped into every single part of the system, and my expression and how I live and everyone's living and experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me was like the biggest thing, like seeing Black, queer, trans people at the forefront of the housing and immigrant rights movement. And then later on, I became like a fundraiser. And so being okay to talk about money, being in decision-making spaces, being the only person or one of few to talk about, like, it's not just about us getting donations, but about us asking each other and asking other folks, because for you to ask upon my behalf feels one problematic as fuck, because you don't know my lived experience. And also I don't need you talking for me. Like, we have people in our community who can talk for us, who can talk for themselves. So it was just seeing how we stepped up and how people would try to put me in a lane that, let's be very clear, I'm a husky ass person. You can't fit me nowhere. And I'm too bright for that. And so are my people. So yeah, and I really appreciate that question, by the way, Kerby.
That's deep. Man, y'all just getting too deep. I have so much to say about that. Sadie, what was your first experience of being transformed by Black queer history? And how did it impact your conception of self?
You know, I think the first thing that really comes to mind is thinking about a sort of erasure and lack of history. So when I first started working on the Eagle Creek project, you know, a lot of folks were like, oh, you know, have you gotten into the archives? Like, have you dug in the archives? And we do have some amazing archives, but at the same time, there, you know, really wasn't very much about the bar there. There was like one flyer, which kind of let me know, okay, like, you know, this wasn't just a figment of our imagination, but at the same time, it shows that, you know, the archive is not like just this end all be all truth that exists. Often we have to make our own archives. I think especially, you know, for artists and scholars who are, you know, in school, it seems like the archive just exists and you get to tap into it. But I really felt like it's our job to take care and create our own archives when there isn't one. So really feeling that that history wasn't there, and just thinking about how many other things are not documented, you know, aren't known. There's no Netflix special about it. You know, if my father could have this space that was so important in so many people's lives, and, you know, there's no Wikipedia page, it's not something grad students are studying, how many other places and names are just slipping through that crack of history, you know, capital H official history, and not being able to provide those lights and those guides to offer transformative experiences. So to me, it was, you know, really about creating history. With that project, I really thought of the bar structure itself as both like a monument as well as an altar. And, you know, I know we've all been kind of talking about monuments and what we want to see represented in this country. And to me, this really felt both like, you know, a monument in the way that you kind of have a bit of reverence and respect and raising up, you know, this kind of shining beacon of the Eagle Creek, but at the same time being an altar, somewhere where you come to engage with, to, you know, uplift yourself with an energy, you know, an intergenerational communing, and really where you go to, you know, give thanks and to be replenished and renewed. And so that part is the part that was really an altar to me. So yeah, I think it's that complicated relationship, you know, between history and also making sure that it's can still be playful and can still be creating its own history as well.
Kim Folkz, you want to catch that question?
Yes, my dear. Would you please restate it? I really was swimming in the responses.
I know.
I love this.
I mean, we could just pontificate and sit here all day.
You just don't know. I'm about to make a soundtrack out of this, honey. So
I know. I'm going to need this
sweet
Zoom
dreams,
recording. Okay.
Right? I want some Black queer dreams, Black trans dreams. I want.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, but the question was,
beautiful. Yes.
What was your what was your first experience of being transformed by Black queer history? And how did that impact your conception of self?
Beautiful question. Thank you for these great questions. Because I was so different as a child, and I read everything, right? I was a voracious reader. I was allowed to explore James Baldwin, right? And James Baldwin was really my guide, my connection to our community. And it wasn't until it really hit me that I was entering into not just a history, but a legacy, and that I was part of that legacy. When I moved out to San Francisco to go to San Francisco State for my master's in ethnic studies, and one of my professors was Angela Davis.
Oh, no.
Yes, honey. Yes, honey. Yes, honey. Angela
I would have been in the front row.
Right? I would get there when the other class was still in session. the class, whatever class, I can't even remember what it was. I'm not even playing. Before her class, I would come in and I would sit in the back until that class left, and I would move directly to the front. There was this thread that I didn't understand wove around me too, until I was seated in that class. And to receive an education from someone like Angela Davis is just, it is a profound honor. And I needed to respect that in kind. And so I immediately started to follow up on any history that she shared with me about the Bay Area, about our community. I started very early on at 21, getting involved with Rafiki. At the time, we were really dealing with the fact that this country was not being transparent about the AIDS epidemic and its impact on Black bodies, on Black people, on the Black community. And so I was like this space explorer, and I'd been shot to another country, to another world, to another planet through the teachings of someone that magnificent. So the transformation took another turn when I was heading to her class, and I was in the Castro, and I was accosted by some folks, and I didn't know how to deal with the experience because my hair was really short at the time, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and they chose to set themselves upon us. And I was on my way to her class, and it's a blessing that I was. When we arrived, clothing torn, food in our hair from them tossing food at us, running. We literally had to jump off of a train to get to class. And she saw us and she said, "Honeys, sit down. Have you had some water? Let's talk about how you were part of an experience that makes you the kind of fighter that we've always needed." Like, this experience became another type of transformation. I no longer saw myself as this explorer. I saw myself as a part of the process. I became a comrade. I literally, in that experience, became a comrade in this struggle. So I would have to say, for me, that was a turning point. I was no longer a casual observer. I became, part of this mission.
Wow.
Thank you, loves.
Okay. I mean, we all comrades now. I love all
we really are.
I know. We gotta link up. We gotta link up after this.
This is the best.
And all y'all out there too. But I think that's a great way, just becoming coming into being a comrade. And that's funny, Rafiki means comrade in Swahili. So, just for this question it's another out there question, but how do we promote and protect the legacies of Black queer community in history? Right now, much of Black queer culture has been commodified. I love Legendary and all of that, but it's like, wow. and how do we represent the intention behind these places, as they're becoming more mainstream? How do we make it intimate and keep it rooted? And a lot of those shifts that a lot of y'all were talking about, Terrence, like how the changes reflect what we're going through. So yeah, I don't know who to start with that. I think I'm gonna start with Sadie. Sadie, you wanna take that? How do we promote and protect?
I think it's a constant struggle, right? So it's always a balance and a dance between, visibility and being recognized, and also that, co-opting and kind of mainstreaming corporatization of a lot of the things that we have fought to have, even the very existence of acknowledged. And I don't, always know the answer. I think it's just always about putting pressure. And I definitely want to shout out a few folks who are doing the work and who I was able to invite to be a part of various events that the Eagle Creek did. So this slide that you have up right now is an amazing, amazing performer. One of the first people that I thought of when I was doing this project is Rashad Pridgeon. And this is their Global Street Dance Masquerade. I think the work that Rashad is doing is so important and is very much in line with everything that we're talking about. I'm sure a lot of folks, on this Zoom are familiar with Rashad Pridgeon. Also, the Black Aesthetic Collective did an amazing film screening at the bar, and they continue to really, I think, give proper dues to a history and a future that we're working toward. Some other folks that really helped with the bringing the bar alive and some of the history: Marvin K. White, Stephen Dorsey, Kelvin Fincher, some people that really brought it to life, the legendary December, Andre Singleton. Our bartender was a dear friend and artist, Redwood Hill, also in the Bay Area. So I think there's so many ways that folks are doing this work, and the fact that we're all supporting each other in it, I think, is what really gives it the strength to really contend with what we're up against. And I think it's we're always going to be fighting, and the point isn't necessarily to have won, but is just to be fighting and to be in the game fiercely and lovingly.
Beautiful. Terrence, how do we promote and protect the legacies of the Black queer community and our history? Promote and protect, comrade.
Promote and protect. I want to follow up on what Kinfolk said a little bit earlier, just because I love shouting James. Anytime someone shouts out James, I know I'm on a first name basis. That's our relationship. I gotta give love. And so this would be very weird if I did that, but I'm not. I'm gonna do it. So I'm gonna take you guys a little bit further close to this photo. Walk with me.
Okay.
So folks can see it. So that's an amazing print by Lexi Valdez. And it's a commissioned work that says, as James Baldwin, has an Afrofuturism look to it. Next time I'll definitely give it out. But it says, the role of the artist is exactly the same as the role of the lover. If I love you, I have to show you and make you conscious of what you're not aware of. And that is how I protect and promote Black legacies. I think that in itself. It's not the validation of whiteness that we need to be looking for, it's the validation of ourselves. And white folks, people, non-Black people, it is about connecting and having deep ass, hard ass, awkward ass conversations, and asking permission and consent to. And for folks who want to do that, there's so many different resources for you to do that, for you to learn from, and know that it's not a one conversation about that's going to make everything okay, or make everything better, but it's a series of conversations. It's a commitment.
Mm-hmm.
The way that I've been able to promote and protect Black legacies is, one, I go out. I go out to all the Black things. So I shout out, like, when I first moved to Oakland in 2011, and just through the like trajectory, the Den started off for me personally. The Den, the good times, you know, we went to Wednesday night at Somar. Yeah,
it was kind of popping at a time. Yeah, it was popping.
Mm-hmm.
It was popping.
And then to protect Black folks, we also shut it down. Mm-hmm. We made community decisions to be like, hey, right now this is not working for us. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's happened continuously in the scene. With Ships in the Night, directed by some really dope friends of mine, amazing ass people. Mm-hmm. There was a point where it got so well known, mainstream to a point, right? We moved from the Oasis Club to New Parish, and people who were on our own were coming in, taking up space and making that place unsafe. Mm-hmm. And in order to protect and promote Black folks, we were like, we're shutting this shit down until we get our act together. Mm-hmm. And it was a collective way. And that part, like, go ahead, Antoinette, go ahead, Tigers, like, an entire crew. Like, that's how you, in the moment, in real time, decide and you showcase your values. You're like, are we doing this for the optics that we're here for Black Lives Matter, or are we here for it for real? So going out and being part of those conversations, going out, putting my money in Black hands, putting on events myself. So I got to put on Dapper Clothing Exchange, right? So looking good is part of a deeper one. We all look in this moment, but looking good looking good in this moment, looking good is a reflection of how to battle the world's perception of who I am. It's one of the things in my toolkit. And so accessing dope ass threads is expensive. And I made a clothing thrift store, pop-up store before it became like a jam, which is really cool, at AU Lounge, right? Which is a Black owned in Broadway in Oakland, restaurant and like event space. I also got to put it on in Culture Collective, right? Which was women-owned, queer, women of color owned space in Franklin. And that was an amazing space. So like, it's creating an ecosystem in which we're putting and funneling money back into our communities from within us. And then also making it feel sexy and irresistible. There is this irrepressible joy that is out here in Black folks. And I not just like encourage us and empower us to like live in it, but I think it's necessary for us in order if we want to see this movement continue. In order for us to be at the forefront, because trust, there's a lot of folks who want to, again, speak for us or feel like they have the answers and can tell us the solutions. But this photo right here, this is a Black girl, Fabi. This is in your, like, you can't tell me how to be as amazing as she is. Like, and that's the whole protecting. It's protecting. I love the question, because protecting and promoting goes hand in hand. Because we're not protecting one another, then how are we elevating each other's work and each other's gifts, right? And the gifts are not always compensated monetarily. Sometimes just putting people on. That knowledge is forever, and that knowledge embolden us to be as fierce as fuck and unapologetic as fuck. I apologize. I don't know if I'm supposed to curse. We're gonna be okay.
We got kids in the room. No, but
yeah. You're welcome. So yeah, this is how I do it.
Wow, thank you. That was a journey. Thank you. That was always. Kim Folkz, take us home.
I love it. We're gonna be all right. That's so beautiful. Right? That's so beautiful. And cursing, that right there, that has power. That has power too. Definitely. And we have the right to that. That's part of our revolutionary spirit. We have the right to feel how we want to feel and say it when we feel it. This is the best question, right? Like this idea of protecting and promoting our legacy, our culture, and making sure that other folks aren't taking up all the space, and more importantly, aren't misappropriating, appropriating, misunderstanding sometimes even, that they cannot hold that which they don't have the proper tools for. We're equipped for this joy, this love, this Blackness, this queerness, this transness. And it doesn't take away from anybody else's experience. It's just that that's not how they came into this. We came in this way. And I love thinking of us and our legacy as the shared treasure. And you can't actually protect and promote something if you don't understand that there's treasure, that there's value in it, right? And so I'm seated right now on Ohlone land in Oakland, where gentrification is off the hook, right? Like it was number one for, I don't know how many years in terms of per capita, like the fastest growing city that is being engulfed and consumed by this thing that just couldn't get enough of us. And so taking up space is about knowing that we deserve it, you know? And I love the way that this has really been a conversation about taking up space, right? That we understand that we can make it a movable feast, or we can establish clubs and hold space there. We just opened the Queer Healing Arts Center in Oakland at 3411 Lakeshore, and we have a 10-year lease because we do not want them pushing us left and right. And we're looking at ownership as it relates to how you build cooperatives. How do you take this money? How do you take this coin? We know how to make coin. Everyone does want to be a part of this energy, this sexiness, this brownness, this bronzeness that we are. Understand it as treasure. Build together. That's the shared part, right? Like if I just think I'm the finest thing, but I'm not acknowledging that you also are a reflection of what I am, I'm not going to honor your treasure. And we'll all be running around trying to figure out how to, you know, build on our own. So I love that we are talking about how to promote and protect. First, you have to know your legacy is based upon a heritage. You know, go into spaces where there's some elders. Go into some spaces where there's some youngins. You know, mix it up. Be willing to think about multiple ways that people have had this life experience in Black, queer, and trans realities and bodies. So I also love James. So there's this amazing, James is all over the place. A matter of fact, we have a house that we started at the Queer Healing Arts Center, and it's the House of Butler Baldwin. And we only walk bizarre, and we acknowledge Octavia Butler and James Baldwin. And this quote, "Ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have." So we have to start within our own community, right? We have to be clear about who we are, how precious we are for and to each other, and start to reflect that in our actions. You know, like, do we put our money into Black, queer, and trans endeavors? Do we make that our first go-to? When someone says they have an idea, do we feel a little like, oh, I wanted to get that idea out first? You know, instead, can we start to shift our energy into, that's a fabulous idea. Comrade, cousin, sibling, let's work together and see how we can make it happen. So over at the Queer Healing Arts Center, we use a horizontal leadership model. No one is the executive director. We are completely outside of the nonprofit industrial complex, because that's about having a middleman. That's about having a middle person, right? Deciding how to use those funds and distancing you from the people who said that they want to do this social good. No, if you want to do some social good, come on down and do it, like actually do it. So we're looking at how to bring as many voices into the space and create something that is worthy of the notion of promoting and protecting legacy. So come through. It's all ages. It's all Black, queer, trans program directors, just getting it in. Everything from, we have a healing circle specifically for youth activists, because we, you know, when we talk about, hey, how are you taking care of your self-care, we have to also look at who is leading in this new revolution. There's so many amazing youth who are there, and they aren't necessarily being given the kind of support that they need. So rather than me being out in the street because I did that, now's the time for me to say, let me just be this container for you. You know, come and lay your burden down. I recognize that burden. Have you had some water, honey? Let's have some tea. So please check out the queerartscenter.com. And if you have program ideas, bring it. We find funding. The funding comes because people are starting to understand we must value that which heals us.
No, I gotta do something real ASAP. Okay, I'm gonna talk to you offline.
Come through. Oh, I'm excited.
Thank you for providing that space. I mean, very important work, and I'll comment more later. But we are nearing the last question, and this is like the question. But if you out there want to ask a question, you know, chat it below, and we will start compiling it. You know, and make it as high level, low level as you want, you know, because I think this group of people just have a lot to say. You know, at this point, it's just like an oracle. So send in your questions, and I'm about to ask this last question. So how do we continue to take space during these times of crisis? You know, if you think about COVID, you think about the Minnesota uprisings, you think about the rebellions in California, you think about gentrification, mass displacement, police terrorism, and just general mass hysteria. What is the role of the Black queer community curator? You know, is it time for us to go underground, pull in a Machiavelli? You know, where do we go from here, especially understanding that there is some real energetic shifts going on out there? And Kim, folks, you want to take that one first?
Yesterday, in another one of the healing circles that we have, the Black Queer Arted Healing Circle, it's queer and trans folks healing, learning how to love ourselves. We were looking at the love languages through our lens. So we've got like 8 or 9, where other people have 5, and they aren't transactional. We're not looking at how we can give our love language to somebody else and have that transaction. Instead, we're looking at how we're giving it to ourselves. And the question yesterday was, what tangible gifts do we give to ourselves, right? And what was so interesting is that what we talked about were things like rest, that we allow ourselves sleep, that we give ourselves the gift of water. It was amazing to see how we have narrowed down and moved outside of the capitalist consumer mindset so that we can start to look at those things that actually feed us. And it seems like such a bizarre thing that we didn't understand that we needed more sleep, and that we needed more water, and we needed, you know, laughter. These are the places that I'm encouraging a lot of activists in particular to find joy, you know, and find power in the word no, not now. Doesn't have to be no indefinite, just no, not now, to create space so that you can have that peace and have that rest. So I say, work in shifts, you know, build your tribe. Please don't try to do this alone. That's not how we were created. And let people know when you need a break. I'm encouraging a lot of people to, because this is a powerful time. I can barely sleep sometimes thinking about the power of this moment. And at the same time, I check in with certain folks and ask them, could you please call me tomorrow and remind me to eat? You know, remind me not to get too caught up. So I say, do this work and do it in tandem, do it in shifts, do it together. But let's keep moving. If you can, keep moving. And when you need to rest, do it, please.
Mm-hmm.
We love you. We love you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sadie, where do we go from here?
Well, I think one of the most important parts is to admit, I don't know. But I love all the questions that we're asking, and I think that's kind of where we need to be in this moment. I think a lot of things that, Kim was just talking about really stuck out to me. I think one of them, being this idea of kind of embodying in the daily practices, whether it's, the structure of the organization or how you're dealing with people, really embodying like the politic and the type of world and care that we want to see in those daily actions. I think that's something that I've been thinking about a lot in this moment where, so many models have really shown their cracks and crumbled in a way. It really gives us an opportunity to rethink all those things, even some of which we might think have been serving us in some ways, not like the big systemic oppressions, but some of the, ego trips and the Instagram kind of simplification of a lot of our work and these struggles and the glossiness and the speed at which we're supposed to be, talking and thinking and working. I think we're really in a moment where, we'll no longer accept that the world can't change because we saw it change dramatically overnight in a lot of ways with the shutdown. It didn't change in the ways that we're dreaming about, but we saw that it can change. And so I think one of the things that is our job at the moment is to really keep pushing for the possibility of that change and what we're fighting for, not settling for like these liberal, lukewarm reform ideas. I think this is really a moment where even for myself, I feel like I kind of, get to come out and offer, an invitation to a more radical politic. It's, I don't always try to get like super in depth into, the specifics of my politics because I feel like, people kind of believe what they're going to believe. And the real work is to organize against people's interests and comforts. But in this moment, people seem to be, searching for new pathways, new modes. And so I just hope that we can keep pushing it to be a real radical shift. And I'm talking about, a world where how much money you have has nothing to do with, whether you have access to some type of housing. A world in which where that would be a crazy idea. Like, why? Just because you don't have paper money, you can't have access to a living situation. I'm thinking about a world where nobody wants to be the richest person in the world because we would measure wealth by how much you share. And if you were the richest person, like you're just not doing it right. So some of these like really, really fundamental shifts that at this point, do we know how everything looks on the ground? No. People didn't know what the world would look like now, but we arrive here because of the work. So I just think that push to not give in to some of the easy, simple solutions and to keep these conversations complicated.
Agreed. Terrence, take us home. Where do we go from here?
Ooh. I think to add, because everything Sadie and Kim's folks have said is just like on. So the only thing I can add is don't get tired. Don't get tired, guys. Whatever you have to do in order to not get tired, and tired meaning like don't get burnt out. Don't be the person who feels like I'm going to give all my money in this very one moment, and then in a month from now, I'm going to feel like I've done my work and I can step outside. I can disassociate from what's happening. Don't be that person. Don't be the person who like jumped into action and then just stops. Don't be the person who feels like I have to do something right now and you don't take time for yourself to realize what is the influence you do have in this moment, which may not be Instagrammable, but actually has a very real change. I'm going to, and what I'm doing is I'm starting and been working on this series called Cool Kids Go to Therapy. It's around mental health. It's around like Black folks' mental health, trans folks' mental health, and just having these conversations in like a light way and also in a very introspective way. So there'll be like comedy variety shows, there'll be shows, they'll be just like giving money out to mutual aid projects, right? Because this is, the revolution has just started, and it's going to be, right? It's not what we used to say, it's not gonna be televised, but it will be memed in this very moment. So if you have to meme yourself up in order to find joy and levity to continue this, do so, right? Because with all this fuck shit that's happening, there's actually some really dope moments to laugh, and we're using those moments as lessons. So take care of each other's health and your particular health. And when you ask like, is this our time and our moment to go underground? If you must rest, then rest. Absolutely. If you're gonna go underground so that you can meet me in New York and then I'll hold to Oakland, I'm here for that. Let's do that. Let's figure out some solutions on that. Or if you want to meet somebody else, let's exchange information. And let's find ways to find respite in this moment, but let's know there's so much work to be done, and let not that be overwhelming, but think of it more of an invitation, an invitation to do the work you've always known you could, and to enact change you've always wanted to, but only felt empowered when you sang a song to do it. So yeah, I think it's our time. I know it's our time to like shake shit up. And I implore each one of us in our own different ways, in our own different communities to rise to that challenge. Yeah.
Oh, Terrence, you closed that out.
That goes it already. There's a lot of people to follow up with.
I know, it's a mic drop moment. Cool. I appreciate you all for entertaining my out there question. So we have a few questions from the audience. The first question is, I am a 55-year-old non-binary person, genderqueer, who has experiences to share and is open and inspired by our young people. Are these places welcoming of someone like me? I think this is for everybody. What spaces can be cultivated to share intergenerational knowledge? Who wants to take that?
I could take that. I think I'm going to go ahead and step on faith that I can take that. I'm in so many different spaces with folks of various ages, and a lot of what I see for those of us who are half a century or older is that accessibility is more the issue, right? Making sure and now that we're all sheltered in place, it's a different form of accessibility that we're looking at, right? And so what we're doing here in Oakland is trying to make certain that folks who are 50 plus in particular, and other folks as well, have access to devices so that they can even check in and do what we're doing right now. So we're doing things at the Queer Healing Arts Center, like gathering up, whatever devices people have in community that they no longer are using, and figuring out how to refurbish them so that we can get them to community members who don't have them. Because there are a lot of great circles that we have online where all ages are coming together, and from all over the world. At the Queer Healing Arts Center, all of our programs pretty much are online right now. And we have folks coming in from, staying up till 2 a.m. so that they can sign in from Peru, so that they can get on and share their poem. And they love knowing that Blackberry, who is, I don't reveal a queen's age. However, BlackBerry is definitely, they're up there. They sign in to see us because they feel that that's part of this new normal now, that the new normal is all of us. It's about being able to be in space where we're all together, And I was always at the Den. Olga T, come on. The box in Oakland, in San Francisco, the Den here in SF, in Oakland, and now it's so lovely. It's beautiful that there are all of these spaces where we can dance and we can release, and there are other spaces. So, it's sort of it's a great invitation for us to think about, yes, someone said the box. Yes, honey. It's a great opportunity for us to think about how to make spaces more accessible for each other, not just in terms of age, but in terms of other, ways of being in our bodies. It's a great opportunity for us to think about how capitalism hasn't always afforded us this type of open conversation about need and want, right? Because we don't always feel comfortable talking about money. Now people are talking about their situation. Folks are throwing out GoFundMes, and I love it. I love it. So just breaking down all of the false barriers that stop us from being able to access to each other, each other is part of it. For this person in particular, check out thequeerartscenter.com, join one of the circles. There are so many that you can be a part of, and we welcome you because we all have something to give to each other, Thank you.
And I think even, and here's the information for that person. But I think even Sadie and Terrence, if y'all could maybe kind of wrap up too about the role of nightlife too, and how people can kind of break inclusion or kind of show up as them full selves, or what kind of have been your experiences trying to include diverse, identities and bodies into nightlife, which is historically very you got to get dressed up and be hella cute and, think about Studio 54 and all of that. But if you have anything to say about that. But if you don't, there's other questions.
Yeah, I would like to add. Regarding the nightlife scene, so there's a couple of ways that I've seen and I've done myself that I feel has created a more inclusive experience. And inclusivity mean recognizing what's the attractive body type, and instead making it feel like everyone's body is attractive. Everyone's body is something to be honored and something to dance up on if they want. So when shifts stopped happening for a moment, and they then came back, there was really great, huge signs posted everywhere. That was this is what consent looks like. And just consent means it's really sexy when you hit me up and be like, hey boy, hey girl, hey they, whatever people's pronouns are, but coming up with confidence and being would you like to dance? Would you like to do X, Y, Z? And while it's not the norm that we hear or see in the club, it actually it can become the norm. I think because we initially, the first thing we think about is movie scenes and how it's always the awkward person being asking for consent. But just before we started putting up these flyers, and I hosted house parties, we show people how to do it. Because sometimes people just need an example, someone they think is cool, someone they find inspirational, someone they want to model themselves afterwards, and see them enact this very same behaviors that they would like to see in the club or in spaces where traditionally it's not cool to ask for consent or to make space for other people who are not mainstreamed. And so that was one way that we broke that down, and broke down false narratives about who's invited into our spaces. And I think another way of doing it personally, but so you don't need anyone's permission or validation or help if you just want to start yourself. All right, so no laugh, whatever. Go in the mirror and figure out what your power stance is.
Okay.
Whatever moves, however you move you shift your weight to the side. I remember I did this exercise with one of my best friends. I was saying move, have a standstill. she decided I'm going to kick and just straight up did a whole like situation. And I was like, that makes you feel powerful? She was like, damn right it does. And I was like, absolutely. Gigi, a disabled Black queer woman, phenomenal. Her pose, her smile is like what makes her confident. And advocating for herself. And making it like the way she breathes. Like, hey, is this gonna have a ramp? Or hey, make sure you haven't forgotten about the Henningsby ramp, because let's be very clear, you want me at the party. And let's be very clear, I always want Gigi at the party. So
yeah.
I think the inclusivity, a lot of people have framed it as like, oh, it's a burden or inconvenience to act a certain way, but it's actually more enjoyable to have everyone included. It makes the experience so much better. I mean, for Cali Fantasies, Gigi got one of the first lap dances. That shit shut everything down. That shit. That's Isis right there. Actually, I will drop her information in the chat box. But Isis and Shay gave Gigi. Gigi is, all right, so you see the heel on Isis's leg that's pointed outwards. So Gigi is in the pink. Yeah, pink sitting down further to your right hand side, I think. Just right below her. But yeah, and then she got a lap dance, and that show's amazing. Making events that are inclusive and that everyone can get like asked on is like the shit. So yeah.
Okay.
I love it. I'll just say real quick, because I know we're probably coming up on time, but every time that I've had the honor of staging the Eagle Creek Saloon project, it's been very intergenerational. And I think that's kind of something special for queer spaces. A lot of times, we're kind of making our own families. And so it might be, kind of centered more towards like folks our own age. But because the project was, my father's friends and my friends, we were able to, rock with the original patrons of the bar, plus my friends. And I really saw a lot of kind of, I think, I'll go so far to say as healing between like young folks and elders, kind of getting that connection outside of a space like, family reunion or church. It was really this kind of in-between space. And I think when we had the float for SF Pride, we had folks literally from 80 years old to 8 months old on that joint. And so it's very important that it's an intergenerational space.
Powerful. So we have 10 minutes left and a few questions, but real quick, this is for Terrence. We have a question from the audience. Do you use biodegradable glitter? And if so, would you accept donations of biodegradable glitter?
One, yes, I love biodegradable glitter. For folks who don't know what biodegradable glitter, also people know Fluid, not Fluid Project, but Fluid the brand, FLUID. Sorry, making me so happy because I love talking about this shit. Biodegradable glitter is really great because glitter actually is really toxic for the environment, unfortunately. But we're working it out, so still hold on to your glitter, y'all. We can still like spread it around. Biodegradable glitter, I absolutely will take, and feel free to. I'll send. Just hit me offline, and we can figure that out. If you don't know, Fluid, FLUIDE, is a beauty makeup brand that does a lot of that. Actually has biodegradable glitter themselves, and also sponsored Ascension, that event where you saw lovely Paris as a drag performer used, and it's a lot of the glitter that I use for different events that I put on. So that was a very specific question. An awesome question.
I know, right? Okay, great. Okay, so our last esoteric question. Let's see. Where'd it go? Okay, our last little esoteric question, which is a really huge one. So take a deep breath. So organizing can be very trying emotionally, and long-term sustainability can sometimes feel unattainable. Can any of the panelists speak to spiritual practices you have that help you stay grounded and or connected to that heritage as Folkz discussed? And this is also kind of like your closing out statement. So, just breathe into it.
Ashe. Breath work, right? Like taking a breath, it's one of the first things that we do when we emerge into this brave new world, right? And we forget how powerful it is to be connected to our breath. Sometimes we hold our breath. That tells us things, when we're holding our breath. Sometimes I put my hand over my heart to remind myself that my heart is beating because there's a long line of folks who made some decisions that resulted in the possibility of me being able to be here. So that helps me ground. I also remember that I am nature, that I don't, delude myself into believing that I'm larger than I actually am, because I think that the smallness, the connection is just as important as feeling big, and grownish. I also enjoy feeling like a child and new. So I spend as much time with plant, if I can't be outside hugging a tree, I speak to all of our fellow sibling species with love and compassion and joy and deep concern for their well-being. Just staying in a space of awareness and not being egotistical about this experience, that helps me immensely. And it actually is quite comforting to know I'm not alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Terrence, what you got to say?
So spiritually, it looks like being with family. And that's like chosen family. That's blood family if it's safe and when it's safe. And I just want to put an asterisk, like safety, like being safe with your blood family is not always easy. If you're a trans person, but it also means like being uncomfortable. So I am a trans man, Afro-Caribbean, first generation Haitian.
Okay, 1804. Okay.
And last year, I took a brave choice in getting top surgery and telling my family, and we had all these conversations. And for some people, it wouldn't be safe because Afro-Caribbeans can hold on to a lot of like Roman Catholicism. And my family does as well. But when I talk about safety, I also mean the safety for pushing your comfort zone and their comfort zone in the way that, as for me, I didn't feel like I was in any violent threat. I felt like my safety needed to be expanded and their safety, the idea of safety, because they were concerned for my safety as a becoming Black man, right? So the spiritualness that I underwent was open myself to be uncomfortable in what I knew was safe right then in that moment, to expanding it, to be like, if I can push them, if we can have these thoughtful, engaging conversations, then if I'm ever in a danger, they can be part of my safety net. Does that make sense? Like, I expanded my safety by being more spiritually open to the possibility. And I also meant that, like, if they weren't about it, then we'd also end our relationship. Like, safety was both these ends. It was ability to lose and ability to gain. And in my spiritual journey of like allowing my family in and taking that risk, I learned, so my name is Terrence Francois. My great-great-grandma's name is Terona. And so I learned that from my aunt who came from Haiti. And she, when I told her and we were having this conversation, she was filling up on my chest. She was like, what? What is it? She was like, so your name is Terrence, right? And I was like, yeah, cool, good. I'm glad we had this conversation. She's like, your great-great-grandma's name is Terona. Did you know that? You did it on purpose? And I was like, actually, I did not. And she didn't say it in a very like as an accusation. It was just more like flip is how we talk. And I was like, I did not know that. And in that moment, I was like, there's God, or Mary Magdalene for me. There's in the opening who I am, I got to find out that in my lineage, there is no way I can deny them, and there's no way for them to deny me. Because I chose Terrence out of this like one to be dorky, cute, cool, and confident. And I didn't know that she was out here being like, you took my name. You just made it Terona to Terrence. And I'm just like, I hear you. So spirituality and safety are interconnected for me. And I think in this movement and organizing, particularly like having that safety and that spirituality found through your family, whatever that may mean, blood chosen, that's how we survive. And that's how it becomes it leads to less burnout and more authentic selves of being. Thanks for that question.
Deep, Terrence. You just been mic drop button. Wow. Wow, Sadie. Bring us home. Home.
Oh, man. I mean, I feel like this is it. This is the caring for the spirit, is being with y'all here and just feeling the radiance of, the vulnerability, the knowledge, the strength, the tenderness that I'm getting from each and every one of you. I think that is the spirit work, and that's what allows me to continue. Also, I want to echo the breath work. I mean, even in situations like this, I have to remind myself like to breathe, to not just be like performing in the moment, or to be performing and not really be in the moment, but to actually be present. I get down with the yoga, I get down with meditating. I invite myself to do that more because I know I need that more. My mind goes a mile a minute. I think a lot of the work is forgiving myself when it's not perfect, and just starting over every day, letting go and starting over. I really want to invite people to follow along, with the work. I mean, specifically like Terrence and Ken and Kerby, I'll definitely be reaching out, to you guys, but I also want people to be able to follow along with the Eagle Creek project. I'm sure Moad has probably done, a good job of putting like our handles, places. I'm just at Sadie Barnette on Instagram. My website is sadiebarnette.com. And of course, because of the pandemic, a lot of the, plans for the Eagle Creek project have been put on hold. And so we're going to kind of have to wait and see when we're allowed to gather again. But I definitely invite folks to just follow and keep up with it, because it really is an invitation, and it's really about everybody else that makes it what it is. So just so much appreciation for the people who've been a part of it, and for getting to know all y'all a bit deeper today in this weird disembodied Zoom way that we can, and just making it work. And I'm very grateful.
I'm really grateful to you all and to this whole conversation. And again, to the Museum of African Diaspora for being true to the game for a very long time. And that concludes our program. So there are links in the chat. Oh, and Sadie, there was a request, and Terrence as well, I guess on your IG or something, could y'all post a list of artists that you had briefly mentioned in your presentations? And you please follow Ken Folkz at queerartcenter.com. Again, Sadie Barnette. I'm Butch Brood on IG. I'm trying to get my followers up. And Terrence, what's your handle? Who are you? Yeah, type it in. Cool. So thank you all for coming. And again, I believe this will be on Facebook. And Nicole, take it away.
All right. So thank you, everyone. That was really amazing to listen to. Thank you, Kerby, for moderating that conversation when there's so many ideas bouncing around and amazing things being said. And I also want to thank SF Pride for co-presenting this program with us. And lastly, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. I encourage you all to check out moadsf.org to check out all of the programming that we're going to be having. We have a lot of online programming right now. And then, of course, I hope you'll please consider supporting MOAD in any way that works for you. You can donate on our website at moadsf.org, or you can text a donation to 56512, type the word MOAD SF, and then follow the link to donate. And yeah, happy Pride.
Happy Pride. It's June. See y'all later. Are we going to stay on? Are you going to stop recording? Okay. Ashe, everybody.
I stopped recording.
Okay.
Awesome job, you guys. That was great.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Yay. I think everyone's leaving.
Wow, we're getting lots of thank yous and ashes.
Why are you all so brilliant?
I know, y'all was bringing it. I was like, oh, Lord.
I hope you're including yourself in that, Terrence.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Shit, yes.
I mean, yeah, Terrence, I mean, shit, there was a few times.
Like, brilliantly intense and Black conversations with people who I don't know aside from kinfolks, like I've had in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and say you were like, people were very vulnerable. People, yeah, absolutely were.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, for me, it wasn't like this performance in which we were like, oh, we're all like head thinkers and we're just like answering questions as they came. Even though we had them, thank you, Kerby, for doing that. Most people wait until like 2 days beforehand. We appreciate you.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like some deep heart answers. And I don't know if that was like on purpose, the way each time someone answered, there was something the other person could follow up with. It felt like an organic rhythm and flow, like this infinity circle that's kept happening, this loop.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. I've never been on a panel such as extraordinary as this one. So, wow.
Dope. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
I
This whole
praise
experience. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. No, amazing. I gotta listen to that. So make sure you actually save it, Elizabeth. I've had many Zoom calls just disappear when
Yeah.
Oh yes.
We had the it's recorded, and I can send you the Zoom recording, which will have all of the chat in it too.
Cool.
And it also was live streamed to our YouTube channel, and so it will live there. It'll
perfect.
Stick there. So I'll send you both the links to the Zoom recording and to the YouTube one.
Mm-hmm.
And if you share it with people, it's better to share the YouTube one, because then that drives people to our YouTube page.
Oh, cute. Okay. So,
thank you guys. I feel like, I was kind of surprised how much we were able to really cross, like, whatever, germinate, pollinate all the overlapping ideas, even though we're on this computer thing. So that felt really beautiful and organic. And I just encourage you guys to keep in touch. Like, if you have mailing lists or whatever, throw me on there. Definitely let me know what work you're doing, like in the short and long term. And love to show up and support in any way that I can.
That's so cool. I'm such a fan of yours. Oh my God, it's Sadie Barnette.
Well, like, I'm telling you, like, this was my dream about the Eagle Creek, is that like grad students and academics, exactly like yourself, who are studying this, will be like continuing that conversation in ways that so it's real full circle to me.
Oh, for sure. I know, and Jamal and his beard and every picture. That's so cute. Yeah, and Terrence, I gotta come to New York and see you and start this Underground Railroad connection.
I'm here for it.
I love it.
Also, pause. Sadie, are you wearing stuff called 911 Call? Is that a Kerby Raymond shirt?
Mm-hmm.
Yo! Try your most in the...
I knew there was gonna be some fashion boys on the call, so I had to go for
you. You called that right up.
Call that right
because it was for you. It was for you.
Okay, fashion.
You said it was for you. I love it.
Which is also gonna look really good.
Yes. Yeah, Kim Folkz, you did the damn thing too. Thanks for
I so appreciate you all.
leading us.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I have to flow into the open mic right now, which is, this is the right way to flow into it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're about to do the thing. We have an action happening. We have actions happening all this weekend. There's a Black and Brown Bruja action that we have on Saturday, and we're about to do something underground on Friday. You'll hear about it on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good time. This is a really good time. I'm excited about this time.
Oh yeah. Everybody off of work, they Zoom calling in.
I know.
So yeah, the possible journalist. And thanks for holding that space.
Thank you.